Hello again, and welcome to the Master's Voice. I am Celestial, and you are welcome to this channel. To old and new subscribers alike, you are very welcome. I have a series of dreams that I received from the Lord today, November the 2nd. These are the dreams I had just before morning, or I can basically say I had these dreams all night. And now that I have an opportunity, I'm going to make these dreams so that I can continue going back to the ones that I had in June and July. I have quite a lot of material to cover from that time period. And so if the Lord will give me anything new, I think it's wise for me to make it right away so that I can be able to head back and finish off the information that I have there. And so I don't have a title for this message. If the Lord gives me a title, I will give it. But for now, I will simply title it Dreams, November 2nd, 2025. Dreams, November 2nd, 2025. And so in the first dream that I had, I dreamt that the whole of America was wearing black. So I saw myself wearing black. Everybody else was wearing black. And not everybody was wearing black by choice. There seemed to be some kind of requirement that we wear the black. So some people wore black because they wanted to, but then I felt an element of pressure or duress to wear this black. Something had happened in the country. We had lost somebody and we were required to wear black. And so I say required, just like I mentioned, because even the people who didn't want to wear black were wearing black. But I saw in reality that their hearts were very indifferent and dismissive in some cases towards whoever it is that had died. They didn't care about the death. In fact, those people who didn't care wore colors underneath their black. And the colors I predominantly saw peeking out from their clothing, especially around the neckline, were yellow, orange, crimson, and gold. Yellow, orange, crimson, and gold. And I could see these colors peeking out at the neck of their black garments. But other people couldn't see that they had a colored item or a colored piece of clothing underneath their black. And so when they saw these people who didn't care about the death, when they saw these people who were, some of them were very cold, others were very dismissive, others were apathetic. Okay, somebody's died, so what? But we were all wearing the black. Yet when other people looked at them, they just thought, oh, they're wearing black like me. But when I looked at them, I could see that these people had these four colors: yellow, orange, crimson, and gold underneath their clothing. And I also could feel that these colors that they were wearing, for some reason, the phrase Hunger Games came to me. And the feeling that I had, these people who were wearing the colors, is that they were wearing their colors as some kind of resistance. So it's not like they didn't have the black. They did, but they had their colors on underneath, like some kind of resistance force. Like, we will not be compelled to wear this black for a death we don't care about. And I saw that among these people who didn't care were some people who were extremely gleeful, extremely happy, like happy to the point of wanting to giggle out loud, wanting to laugh out loud, wanting to really celebrate the death of whoever it was that had passed. But they didn't show how they felt, or they couldn't show. So they didn't show any glee, but I could see that they were gleeful. And the same way they didn't show any glee, they didn't show any remorse at the same time, because they didn't feel any. Now, when people are grieving and they're wearing the black, you can see that they're grieving. Their actions are of those who have been bereaved. They're sorry. They're heavy. They're visibly carrying the loss with them. Even the ones who try to be strong, like the men. You can see when a man has lost someone, because losing someone, the act of having someone die and pass away out of your life, brings a necessary weight. It brings a necessary heaviness to the person, that it becomes very easy to see when someone is faking grief. It's very easy to see, no matter what America is currently doing, for instance, in the case of the Kirks, and coming up with excuses like, oh, people grieve differently and we don't all respond to grief the same. The amount of lies that people are willing to lie to themselves in this country to excuse behavior that is obvious is something that is really beyond the pale. Human beings are made fundamentally the same by the same God. And so when death comes into a situation, we all respond the same. Some of us may be more loud because culturally death is grieved louder in some places than in others. But because we have this same type of soul within us, when true grief is present, there's always heaviness. There's always this lowering of the psyche that is very visible for others to see. And in the absence of that thing, it is very annoying for people to keep claiming, oh no, some people have it deep, 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 deep inside next to their leather pants. That's why you can't see it. Grief is grief. Sorrow is sorrow. Heaviness is heaviness. If these things were not universal, we wouldn't have Isaiah, I think it's Isaiah 61, telling us about what the spirit of heaviness is and how you have to actually physically seek the Lord to have it removed so that he can exchange it and give you a garment of praise. When you are in grief, it's very hard for you to enter into the place of praise unless you are helped by a strong support system. So when you see people smirking and they claim that they're grieving, when you see people going like this and there's absolutely no liquid, that person is not grieving, no matter what the media tells you, no matter what that person's supporters tell you, because you have two eyes, an intuition and a spirit, and they work. You can see where grief is there. So in this dream, I could see who was really grieving and who was not grieving. I could see who was apathetic, like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? The person has died. If we got to wear the black, let's wear the black. I could see the people who was truly sorrowful over this death. And I could see people who were annoyed that they were forced to participate in this national grieving that we were doing. And they were showing their resistance by wearing just beneath the black, maybe with just this much showing, a color, red, crimson, yellow, orange, and gold. And I had a feeling that these people saw themselves or were doing it as their small little resistance against the powers that be or whoever it was that had everybody in black. But if they weren't sorry, they weren't sorry. They could not show their real feelings, some of them. They were giddy, they were gleeful, but they couldn't show that. But at the same time, they were not showing any remorse that they didn't feel. So it was understood that if you were going to show giddiness and if you were going to show glee, somehow it was going to get you in trouble, not being able to control your real emotions if you were one of those people who was happy or relieved at the death. As long as nobody saw that you were gleeful, and as long as nobody knew that you were gleeful, then apparently it was all right. So that is the first dream that I had. And the understanding the Lord gave me is that a death is coming to the United States. It's going to be a very big death. It's going to be a death that, whether you think you're going to be unaffected by this death, you are mistaken. This death is going to be so big that it's going to affect the nation. It's going to affect the entire country. Now, the person that I believe we're talking about, because I prophesied this death here many times, and in 2025, I prophesied this death several times since the middle of the year when God was saying that President Donald Trump is nearing the end of his assignment. Another prophecy says that MAGA has captured you. MAGA has done its assignment. What was the assignment of MAGA? The assignment of President Donald Trump in particular, and MAGA in general, Make America Great Again, has been to rush America into the beast system. That is the assignment. MAGA has accomplished in only 1 year changing the entire face of a democratic United States. MAGA has been the means by which the president has justified breaking the rule of law, ignoring the legal system, ignoring Congress, and just running a one-man show by saying that he will make America great again, and by relying on the never-ending acceptance of his voter base. The president has been able to accomplish what truly, if you're a student of politics, if you're a student of history, I don't claim to be an expert in any of those things, but to those of you who went to school specifically to study this stuff, those of you who have read the books, those of you who have written the books, you have to admit that the transformation of America in only 10 months, 11 months has been nothing short of phenomenal. The word phenomenal doesn't necessarily have to It doesn't necessarily have to refer to something that is positive, like, oh, that was a phenomenal dinner. Oh, that was a phenomenal event. You have to say that it is phenomenal for the administration of a country to host a ball on the eve of its decision to starve the people. That's phenomenal. That is world-class capitalism. In your face. This is the kind of thing that if Charles Dickens were alive today, America, he would be writing late into the night, penning his latest and possibly greatest novel, because that man's entire life was devoted to examining the wide divide between the rich and the poor, the have and the have-nots in his day. And if Charles Dickens were alive today in the United States, he would not be writing about Tom Sawyer. He would be writing his greatest opus yet, to examine how it is that the leadership that the people overwhelmingly voted for has become so distanced and divorced from the people in less than a Gregorian calendar year. That takes some doing. That is marvelous work. If you are a student of history, if you're in France, if you're in anywhere else observing America, I know that your blog is on fire, because every day you wake up, the leadership of the United States is giving you something to work with. And so what God is showing is that America is about to have a death, and he says that death is going to preface an authoritarian regime. To preface something is to be a precursor to something. It's the previews when you go to the movies and they tell you this summer, and then they show you about 3 to 5 movies that are coming, 3 to 5 movies that are basically almost in production, or they're about 3 months out from being in the can, and then they will come to the big screen. So you get to sit there watching and deciding, oh, it's going to be an awesome winter because I want to watch that and I want to watch that. That's what the preface is. Even when you read a book, the preface is the little bit that they will put after the introduction and whatever. That preface is just a little bit that they write where you kind of get an idea of what kind of scene is going to be set in the book, what kind of book it's going to be, what general direction this book is going to lean into. It kind of paints a starting picture. And God says that this death that is coming is going to preface an authoritarian regime. This is what he said to me. He also said that America is not yet an authoritarian regime. And I have to say that I'm very glad that God has come to the forefront and clear up something that I've been thinking. Because if you watch the average American freaking out right now as the president is merely testing the bounds of his power. That's exactly what it's like. It's like when you go to the shelter and you get an animal, you get yourself a puppy or you get yourself a full-grown dog. If you decide you want to rehome a full-grown dog and you bring it home, that dog is going to spend much of the first day investigating. If you live in an apartment, that dog is going to be moving from room to room, looking around. Why? Because the dog wants to orient himself with where he is. If you have a yard, even better. The dog is going to be at times standing next to you because this is a new environment, but at times he's simply going to break away and leave you because he thinks he sees a rabbit. He thought he smelled a chicken. Is that a chipmunk over there? You guys have chipmunks? Because we didn't have this at the dog home. He's going to dart away and then come back to you. Dart away and come back to you. And that's what's been happening for at least this first year of the administration. The president will say he will not do something, and then he will do it. And then the court mechanism will swing into action with Congress at the back going, hey, you didn't ask us. And then the courts are going to come back with some lopsided porridge nonsense of a decision and agree with him. And then the thing that he did is going to stay. Conversely, he's going to say he won't do something, and then he does it. And then Congress will go, hey, and then the courts will come back with some twister of a decision and agree with him. And the few times that they come back and say, hey, you can't do that, he makes absolutely no effort to rectify the thing. Then Americans say, we're in fascism. Americans say, no, we've become a dictatorship. No, you haven't become a dictatorship. The only people who are experiencing dictatorial effects, for instance, are the people that ICE has taken, are the people that were illegally, the whole building was arrested without warrants. So all of a sudden you just come to a building and you arrest all bodies in the building, including the children. You haven't articulated any reasonable cause or probable cause for why you need to arrest the whole building. You just descend on the building, dropping out of the Black Hawks or whatever they took there, running out of the tanks, arrest an entire group of citizens, non-citizens, whatever you can find, zip tie them, put them into the back of the budget rental trucks. To those of you outside the country, if you're moving in America, you can rent a U-Haul, you can rent a budget truck, and you can put your own things in it and drive to another city and then park the car at whatever other offices that they have. You don't need to get a mover. If you can afford a mover, you get a mover. Some people, some families just move themselves. So the government simply went to get moving vans, moving trucks, which do not have windows at the back. Please understand. When you're moving your bed, your fridge, and your washing machine, they don't need to breathe. So the back of a budget truck has no windows. It has no fans, no nothing. It is a sealed dark box. That is what the U.S. government put people into, zip ties, without articulating, explaining to any of them why they're being arrested. Basically, an entire apartment was raided in this country. But I said that in 2020, and that is only a 2019 dream I made in 2020 when I first started my ministry. It was one of the earliest videos that I made that I said that I saw the government come and raid an entire apartment building, and all of us were in the building waiting to get swarmed. We had a feeling that something was going to happen, and then they just came to every door, move, 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 hitting doors and everything, and they took everyone in the building without resistance. And I said that it was army people. I saw them in camo, and that is exactly what happened in Chicago 5 years later after I made that prophecy. And so God says that the death that's coming to America is a preface to an authoritarian regime. We are not yet in an authoritarian regime. We are in the time period where power is being tested. And we have to be honest that that power is being tested to magnificent success. Every time an abuse of power is tested in the United States by the current administration, it is successful. You may be upset about it as well. You have the right to be as a citizen, but that doesn't change the fact that the contest to power has been thus far successful and is likely to continue to accelerate in that same direction. So God gave a prophecy, I think it would be June or July, somewhere there, where I was trying to go through as many as possible. And God says that MAGA has already captured you, America. MAGA has already done the work of destroying the rule of law. MAGA has already done, MAGA as a mantra, I guess, as a motto, as a blueprint, as an agenda, has already done the work of destroying the rule of law. It's already done the work of trampling on civil rights and constitutional rights. And so God is saying, and has been saying, I've been prophesying it for at least the remaining half of the year, that the president is nearing the end of his usefulness to the people who were using him. So Americans, a certain segment of Americans, strongly believe that this man is his own man. They believe that he's a self-made man. They believe in some kind of paranoid delusion that he is God's man, that he is God's will for the nation, which always underwrites what I say here on this blog, that asking the average American who God is just a mixed match. You never know what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you something whereby God, quote fingers, is synonymous with their ideals, their values, what they think. God strongly matches the inner temperature of the average person that you'll be asking. Very few people in this country actually see God as different from themselves, as opposite to themselves, as someone higher than themselves, somebody that they don't really have the right to question and jack up and say, well, why are you doing this? If you're God, then why don't you do that? And so God has a very active role in politics in America because that's what he is assigned in people's brains. And so the people who voted for the current president strongly believe that he is God's choice. A lot of them were lied to by liars who told them that God directly told them that President Donald Trump is his will for America and is his choice. And so they went very confidently to the polls, because why won't you vote confidently if somebody told you that God told them? That's how it works. You don't need to test anything in that. You don't need to use your eyeballs and look at the character of the person that you're voting for. You just need to march at the polls, because the spiritual authorities that you claim are authorities have told you that God told them. But you were scammed. You were highly scammed. You were scammed with the scam of a century, and you are now eating the rocks and the stones that go along with that. Likewise, the people who didn't think anything like that are also eating the rocks and the stones that go along with that. And so Yah has been saying that MAGA has completed what it was created to do. And therefore, the usefulness of the president is waning in the eyes of those to whom he is contracted. For he is indeed a man under a contract. Yesterday, by the grace of God, before I ever knew that I would get these dreams, I was going through my prophecies, and the one that I settled on and really enjoyed was the Kennedy connection. That was a video that I made maybe, I think, at the very beginning of October. So it's not even 2 months old. I was listening to the thing. I was cleaning. I was doing what I was doing. I really enjoyed that video. I really enjoyed the way that the Holy Spirit taught on that video. I was listening. I was learning from my own self. And I was listening to God's perspective on what leadership is in America, how easily co-opted it is. It is so easy to buy out an American leader. First of all, you're the one who's breeding them from childhood. You're the one who's picking among them and deciding you're going to be the 41st president. You're going to be the 44th president. Imagine black people having to deal with the fact that even Obama is a staged stooge among the presidents. Imagine cheering for what you think is a magnificent breakthrough of so-called melanin, only to find that Obama has blood ties running in him, along with all the other white people that you thought he became a maverick over. The thing is pathetic. The thing is painful if you actually stay joined to it. The only way to become just apathetic to it, like, okay, so what, is when you decouple from America. But it's very hard telling Americans to decouple from America, because their insistence is, Celestial, if I decouple from America, then what? Why are you asking me then what? Then nothing. Then you've decoupled from America. You go somewhere else and you build a new life. What are you, a rock, a brick? Are you connected to a building that you can't disconnect yourself and move and start over? These are high possibilities. Older people than you are doing it. All the people who have retirement money, decent retirement money, are sitting. I sent my mother a clip from TikTok just for her to see. I said, Mama, look at all these people sitting at the top of high rises, while experts tell them, we're going to go over the general information, and then after that, we're going to have experts moving among you to match you with where you think will work for you. And then the guy said, if you're not sure about where you want to go, think about where you don't want to go, and then we can cross that off the list, so at least we know what we're working with. Right now in this country, and almost everybody in that room had white hair. Can you imagine? This is all the older people with disposable income. All the real estate people are saying, of my sellers, between 80 and 90% of my home sellers are moving out of the country. So what are these people doing? These people are pulling their wealth and equity out of the market before the rush, because events are coming that are absolutely going to create a rush. And when they create that rush, the value of everything else will go down, and that's because everybody will be trying to cash in their chips in the casino at the same time. Wise people are pulling it out now, and they're leaving because they can see that MAGA has completed its assignment. But God says that this death is going to preface an authoritarian regime. So we're not yet in the authoritarian regime. No matter the panic and you guys, he's a fascist and we're in fascism. No, you're not, because you still are able to make videos, and nobody's kicked down the door with the black motorcycle helmet and the black uniform to cart you off to a prison whereby they will pull your fingernails out one by one and ask you, who are you working for? When they know you're not working for anybody. They just want to pull your fingernails out just to pull them. It can't be fascism unless you have all the facets. So God is saying that this is a preface. The death will preface the rise of the real authoritarian regime. America is not yet an authoritarian regime. The struggle is yet ongoing between the death of a republic and the rise of a dictatorship. So America is dying then. America, the Democratic Republic, the one that you know, the one that you were raised in, the one that you pledged allegiance to the flag and everything, that republic is dying, struggling for its life, the kicks of a dying horse. That's why you still get political challenges today. That's why you still get people trying to have lawsuits against ICE today. But the dictatorship, Yah says, is rising. America shall be, on the face of it, a republic that is known by other nations of the world as she has always been known. So God says, when you look at America on the face of it, people who have always known America to be land of the free, home of the brave, champion of democracy, those who still believe that shtick, right? They're going to look and they will still see the same old America. They will still see the same old Statue of Liberty. They're going to see everything that they're used to seeing. But God says on her operational face, this means when you get down to the brass tacks of how the country is actually going to run, her system of laws, the way that society will be run, and her security forces, especially the army and that branch that has day-to-day interaction with the citizens, the police. God says all these things, the system of laws, the military, especially the army and the cops, as well as the security forces and how the society runs. God says that all these things are going to change to a military interface that leaves the people of America with little to no room to participate. So we're going into, I guess, what people always call martial law. We're going to go into a military-run state that does not require any feedback from you. And then people get upset when they will come to the Master's Voice, and I will say that you have come to the Master's Voice to listen. Here on the Master's Voice, it's not just that you're listening to Celestial. You are listening to Celestial tell you what God is saying. And God doesn't need his opinion to be run through a survey of, do you like it? Are you comfortable with it? Do you believe it? Does it feel good? Is your discernment going off? God is speaking, and that means that we, as the audience that God intends his words to come to, are listening. That's all we're doing. We are listening. We are in the passive role. God isn't asking us what we think about the fact that a war is coming. God isn't asking us what we think about the fact that we should have gotten passports by now. God isn't asking us what we think about the fact that we're going to have an authoritarian government that is one day going to be pulling citizens from their bed in whatever it is that they're wearing and telling them you are guilty of sedition. You are guilty of preaching on the internet. You are guilty of anti-statism. You are guilty of being an enemy of the state. Oh, what was that one from the Handmaid's Tale version of the prophecy? You are guilty of being a troubler of the crown. That's where you ladies, that when your husband starts cheating, then you start complaining. Then you start saying, Edmund, who's this second diamond ring for? I never got a diamond ring from you. And Edmund, what are these charges? And then Edmund will start going to work and making mistakes on purpose, hoping that his supervisor will say, you're making many mistakes today. You're costing the crown money. And then he will say, I am troubled. I have a troubler. And then his boss will say, speak on. And then he will tell his boss that you're bothering him without mentioning that he's sleeping with someone else. And then they will come and get you in your bathrobe, and you will be wearing that little linen garb that I mentioned in that prophecy that I'm describing, whose name escapes me at the moment. You will face a trial as a troubler of the crown for simply telling a cheating man that you are indeed, good sir, a cheating man. God is not really asking us how we feel about that. So when we're in a spiritual space and we can't absorb what the Holy Spirit, who is our biggest supporter, is telling us without, well, I just feel that, and I just feel, then what are you going to do when you get outside and you find that the entire apparatus, not only of the government, but of the security forces who have more power than you, the government that has more power than you, and the nation that you live in, the very society, starts telling you, we don't need any input from you, actually. We're now operating in a way that doesn't require any citizen feedback. Those who have been trained to keep quiet in front of God will definitely know by that time how to keep quiet in front of guns. But those who have not been trained will begin to speak, and then we will be seeing them in the public executions that are meant to train us in case we get ideas. So that is the first dream. Just a moment, please. The dream of a death that kind of forced everyone to be in mourning, that kind of forced everyone to be grieving, that was taking place, I guess, in a kind of situation where if you actually did show how you felt, so that you were happy or whatever about the death, then there were bound to be, it wasn't said out loud, but there were bound to be repercussions. And basically, America, if you didn't learn from the killing of Charlie Kirk, right? If you didn't learn from a white man being shot in public, and how anyone who expressed glee, anyone who expressed apathy, basically anyone who was unwise enough to get on the internet and say, what does this have to do with me as a person of color, that this man was constantly attacking and constantly saying that we're second-class citizens with questionable mental abilities, that we were better off during the time of slavery because we had lower crime during slavery. And so it was a time that, yes, there were a few atrocities, but generally blacks were better off. If you didn't learn from the loss of jobs, the loss of social status, the canceling that took place to anyone, that happened to anyone, the strong backlash that happened to anyone who spoke against America's latest march here, then obviously you will not be able to understand this dream and where God is basically telling us that we are going. We are going to a time where those who are trained to keep their emotions and their feelings inside them, where actually emotions and feelings belong in times of danger, will be just fine. If you didn't learn from that situation that you can get real world consequences, that is something tangible, by expressing something intangible, which is just your feelings and your opinions, then you should know that this is going to be an even bigger test, and many people are going to fail it. So that is the first dream. In my sleep, the Lord told me, Lin 40. This is Lin. This part I don't understand, so I'm just saying it to be obedient. The Lord told me at the same time that I was seeing stealing going on, he said, Lin 40, Lin 50, Lin 60. And at that very time that he was telling me, I was watching the government act like the Pink Panther, lifting something out of, I wouldn't call it a security drawer. I wouldn't call it a security drawer. I'm just going to say that I saw the government stealing. At the same time, the Lord said to me, Lin 40, Lin 50, and Lin 60. So when I woke up, I actually thought maybe it relates to that computer program Linux. I thought that it might be Linux 40, Linux 50, and Linux 60, but it turns out there's nothing like that. So I don't know what Lin 40, Lin 50, and Lin 60s are. But I saw the government stealing, and I say stealing with the capital STEALING, wearing what looked like a full black body sock. The government was dressed like a person would be dressed if they were in a movie, where, you know how sometimes you're required to do certain stunts in the movie, but then they want it to seem like it's being done by magic or something. Then that's where they put the green screen. And the person who's working on the green screen also wears a full green bodysuit. Wears a full green bodysuit, and I think I've only seen them have a little cutout for the face. And then the person in green can then hold props, perform actions, and be in the movie doing a lot of things without being seen, because you can scrub them out because you can't see them. Well, that's how the government was. I saw two men wearing head-to-toe black body sock that even covered their faces. It was a heavy-duty body sock, like, I wouldn't say it was like body armor. It was definitely not as strong as body armor, but it was a thick knit body sock. But when it came to their faces, instead of having a cutout for the face or even eye holes, like maybe as thieves do, there was a mesh. It almost like this samurai mesh, or sometimes in the anime, they will have a mesh over the face where the entire face is still darkened, but for breathing purposes and seeing purposes, they can see through the mesh. And so it was sheer nylon or sheer mesh over the face part that allowed them to breathe and see without any part of their flesh being seen, but the rest of the body was in the black body sock. And then just like that, I saw these men go into the US mainframe, as in Just imagine this whole world as if we entered like in the Matrix. You know how Neo entered into the Matrix, the mainframe, and then he was in another world, but that world was explained to us as the existence of being inside the belly of everything that we have and do and are and believe in, the entire infrastructure of a nation. I saw these men in body socks go into the US mainframe as if they were entering the entire database of the United States like it was a store. And these two men stole so much money and data of citizens out of the mainframe that it was inconceivable. They basically looted the country, is what I was hearing. And how they were doing it is they used black ops. I just spoke about black ops in a recent prophecy, and it was defined as, we went to the internet together and we looked at it as, black ops is a secret operation run by usually the security or military forces of a nation with or without the knowledge of the sitting government. For instance, the Bay of Pigs in Cuba was a black ops that the president only found out about later when it was basically at crunch time, go time, and he refused to lend support. President John F. Kennedy refused to lend support and sign off on that secret op. And as a result, the operation failed, and that was one of the turning points into why he was killed. He refused to lend support to American mercenaries who had trained Cuban mercenaries to overthrow the president of Cuba, Fidel Castro, in what America calls regime change. You might recognize regime change because America is openly talking about it now in Venezuela. And this is one of the first times in my memory as a person ever hearing America discuss regime change out loud. And that should let you know that we are in a totally different time frame. America always carries out regime change through black ops secretly and then lies about it and says we have no idea as to why an American friendly president is suddenly sitting in that country. We don't know how that happened, but hello, new president that we don't know, that we installed. Can we do business with you? America never owns up to toppling presidents, toppling governments, upsetting the financial status and the economic status of countries. But now it's being openly discussed on TV. And the reason it's being openly discussed on TV is what I always told you years ago. I told you that when the government has no more use for a particular pattern of thing, they're going to throw away and they'll come out. I said, once you start to see what America is doing pop up on Wikipedia, they're done with that method of doing things. And so they don't mind if we know. The U.S. government only disposes of a method of doing things when they know they can't pull the wool over anyone's eyes concerning that thing anymore. Once it becomes useless to them, as in the people can see them broad-eyed, they will totally throw it away and start to act like, oh no, it's always been our intention to discuss killing presidents on the evening session of the news with Mitch McConnell. We've always done it that way. They've never done it that way. America is the hand in the green screen glove, black glove, hidden glove, invisible mist cape that always hides itself as it works. But I saw the country being looted through black ops till there was next to nothing left inside the mainframe that these men entered and were looting. America looked like an okra when you cut it in half and then you take a spoon and you scoop the entire guts out, the seeds, the fibers, everything, and you just leave the green halves of the okra and then you close the okra again. And then the person doesn't know that inside the okra there's absolutely nothing. That's what it looks like somebody had scooped the guts out of something and then put the two halves together again to look like there was nothing. So I saw that the government of the United States looted the country using a black op that left no trace of how they did it. Even a hacker wouldn't have been able to see how they did it, because I saw that the government used software that acted like a black sock on their presence and their footprints. If you checked how they had come in, you wouldn't be able to find it. if you looked for telltale signs and signatures to at least tell you how they did the robbery. How did they get in? Because at least the robbery is already obvious in front of you. But at least you want to know, how did they get in? Did they have a key? Did they have a clone key? Did they come in through the back window? Did they have inside access? Did somebody help them? Did they smash the patio glass? How did they get in? I saw that you couldn't find a single digital signature or footprint showing who did it or how they did it. Even if you got a hacker to help you, whoever the government used to help them do it was better than the hacker that you could bring in. You know, the government has a habit of, bringing in hackers to say, oh no, these kids would get up to bad, so let's hire them to solve things. I saw that even if you brought in a hacker to tell you who did it, how they did it, the software that they used was like a total wipeout black sock on their presence, and you were unable to get any digital signature, any footprint showing you who did it or even how they did it. But what I saw in my sleep is two men wearing a full body stocking that had some weight to it. So it wasn't like, ladies stocking. Full body stocking with some weight to it, with the head part, the face part being a lighter mesh so that they could see and breathe. And God let it be known to me, that's the government doing a black op on the country. And then I saw them lifting out of different buildings. And this is what I was trying to describe in the beginning. Just imagine a building. Just imagine different government ministries and different financial places. And imagine, downtown where they have the PATH trains, where all the big banks are and everything like that. Just imagine that the building is just a little bit shorter than a man. Instead of being multi-height skyscrapers, imagine that all those buildings came down to just about the height of a man, and that their lid could flip off like a garbage can, like a trash can. I saw all the buildings with the heads flipped back, and the men were reaching into them and just lifting out something like that and putting it into their thieving things. I wouldn't say a sack or whatever. They were just putting it into some other type of carrier, and then they would close back the head of the building and just walk in the city to the next building, open the head of JP Morgan Chase and loot out of the belly, open the head of, the MTA and loot out of the transport system, loot out of the train systems, loot out of the aviation authority. They were just going around America, opening the heads of buildings and looting out everything. And what I saw them taking, the two things that I saw them taking in unbelievable measures, was data on you as citizens and everybody living here, and also as much money as they could take out of private equity and public funding of the whole country. So that is the second dream that I've had, and I've been speaking about this dream since, I've been speaking about these things since at least 2019. You can look at prophecies like the princes of Babylon, the leaders of Babylon. You can look at from underground. I have two prophecies where one of them where I was saying that I saw the government ran a heist. There was a heist run on the financial systems of America, and I saw them taking all the gold out of the storage places, including one big central reserve that they have here in New York, where there's massive prison bars on all the windows. I saw them with armored trucks, and they took all the gold out and they put the gold, they would lay the gold, then lay a velvet cloth, then lay new gold, then a velvet cloth, then new gold, so that the gold doesn't scratch each other, because gold is very scratchy if it's high quality. And then they zoomed off, phew, and they were taking the gold to rich people's houses to take it there. So not ordinary rich people. Don't think of ordinary rich people like the creator of Spanx or whoever. I'm talking about the billionaires that run the United States. America's always talking about oligarchy, not knowing that she has the biggest oligarchs in the world. There are very few people outside of the United States that are actually richer than the rich people we have here. Well, I saw that something happened, and during the chaos, stock market chaos, something like that, the rich people looted all the financial centers of the United States, and then the whole place collapsed. And I saw the news people going, what a shocker, the market's tumbling today. I don't know if we're going to get back, Bob. That is what I saw, and that's one of my oldest prophecies. And this theme that America will be looted from within has been repeating itself over the years. So Yah has put his hand on it again to let us know that a massive financial crash will take place in the United States. And when they tell you it's the markets, don't believe it. When they tell you that, oh no, the British money fell and the American money was affected by that, don't believe it. It's because the United States government ran a heist within the borders, looted everything, and stole a ton of data, protected data that they should not be able to get without going through the courts, without getting congressional approval. They stole data on the people, and they also stole so much money out of the private sector and the public sector, and they dipped. And there was no sign who had done it or how it had been done. The next thing I saw the government in the houses of rich people killing them. So I saw the government exterminating rich people. And I saw that the government was killing these rich people through privately contracted hits, which is where you go and you get these people whose job it is to kill other people for large sums of money, to leave it clean, to leave no trace at the scene. But I do not know why they were getting rid of them. And even when I had this dream and I woke up, I went to church, I came back and I was asking God, before I make the prophecy, what is the reasoning behind the killing of the rich people? Why were the rich people being killed? God, they won't just kill people. Are they killing them because of secrets? Are they killing them so that they can steal their money? Are they killing them because they're political enemies? And he did not give me a response. So if he does give me a response, I will come back and give it in a later prophecy. But for now, I do not know why the rich people were being killed. But how it happened in my dream was, when you live with people and they tell you, oh, come and live with us. I was not living with these people, but I'm just giving an example. When you live with people and they say, oh, we'll live upstairs and you live downstairs, and then you have your own separate apartments from them. And then let's say you want to leave your room and go to the kitchen to get something in the middle of the night. That they're upstairs. They live in the upstairs part of the house and you live in the downstairs part of the house. And so you would probably just walk across maybe in a t-shirt and shorts or whatever, because you're not expecting to see anyone downstairs. So that is how God showed it to me. I was walking across these rich people's living room from one edge to the other edge, when I suddenly came across a man fully dressed in black, but he was wearing, he wasn't wearing a face mesh sock this time. He was wearing the ordinary burglar's, the burglar's mask. You pull it down. It's just like you can roll it up and then it can look like a hat. It can look like a beanie. But when you roll it down, it has eye holes and a mouth holes. So this man thought he was alone and he had rolled up the beanie. It was a white guy and he had killed a rich couple. And he was in the process of rolling up a big blue tarp. Okay. Tarp is that waterproof thing that people put on top of their boat to protect their boat from weather. They put it on top of their car in extremely bad weather when a snow is coming, that kind of thing. It can be very big. This man's tarp was massive and it had cutouts in it because this man had come home before this couple had come home, and he had completely done their entire living room in the blue tarp. He didn't move any furniture. This tarp had so many either zippers that you could open according to how anyone's living room was, that once he starts to unroll the tarp, if he comes across a couch, he will just unzip and unzip so that the tarp can go around the legs of the couch. And then he continues unrolling, and maybe there's a long cabinet there. He'll just unzip so that he can push the tarp under the cabinet. It's to catch blood spatter. In case you were wondering, he had mapped out the entire living room floor of these people in the blue tarp to catch blood spatter for when he killed them. And he did this when they were out. He did it while they were out, maybe at dinner, maybe at a play, maybe at a movie, maybe visiting their kids, maybe even coming home from the airport. But whatever it is, this man is of the type of people who, when they are hired, you will always come home to find them drinking a cold beer and having a sandwich in your kitchen before they kill you. They come and they sit. You've seen them in the movies. They come and they sit in the living room in the dark and wait for you. And then you come home and you start taking off your coat, and then they say, you're an hour later than you usually are. And then that's when the terror starts for you. So that's who this person was. Convicted, contracted hitman that the government sent to kill rich people, or to kill this rich couple. And the way Yah was showing it in the dream is that the government is going to kill a lot of rich people, a lot of high ranking people. And this is part of authoritarianism. And you should not be surprised, because God was very polite to us. That's why he started the first dream with showing us that we are truly about to enter into correct authoritarian times. Americans, by and large, do not understand authoritarian times because it's alien to we who live here. You don't know what it means. It's just on the movies, and it's also assigned reading at college. But other people watching me know very well what happened in elections before they became a dictatorship. They knew, and they watched all their favorite candidates drive off the edge of a cliff, drive into a tree, get fished out from the sea, and all the genital of the man was gone. His entire family went missing. They know what happens when an opposition party or an opposition newspaper completely gets burned down to the ground, and the government goes, oh, maybe you guys shouldn't work in there too late drinking tea. We've heard that drinking tea late at night, you might forget to unplug the kettle, and then kaboom. Condolences, though. And then once that newspaper is put out of commission, that newspaper isn't going to be able to print any opposition news. If the opposition newspaper is owned by one man, that man has had to flee the country in some instances. That is how you know you're in a proper authoritarian regime. Having the president tweet occasionally nasty things is not authoritarianism. It's just the sign of the man's own inner capriciousness. And God already told you that when a nation is judged, you will get a woman or you will get a child to govern you. That's what you get when you're in judgment. Biblically, you get led by a woman, or you get led by capricious leaders who order the death of all their ministers, like King Nebuchadnezzar. If Daniel had not been there to interpret that man's dream, that man was going to kill his entire cabinet, select a new cabinet, and then get mad at the new cabinet ministers for not knowing anything about the country. He would kill all the people who had been in the job a long time, promote new people who just got there, and after a month he would start complaining to the guards, you know what, I'm going to kill them all because they don't know anything about what's going on. That's because they're all new on the job, because you killed the experts. When you are going into a proper authoritarian regime, the very first thing that the government will do is start getting rid of political enemies. Political enemies, in case you don't know, if you write anything about the government, you're an enemy. If you are a lampoonist, anyone who makes cartoons, you're an enemy. If you are an opposition, you run an opposition show, you run an opposition podcast, you're the Young Turks, enemy. If you are someone who protests, for instance, through her fashion brand, and you come up with your latest fashion show and say, oh, this is against fascism, and then all the models are coming out wearing torn US flags, enemy. You're an enemy in print. You're an enemy in music. You're an enemy in written media like the New York Times, the kind of editors that will approve stories that make the president not look good. Enemy. Enemy if you're producing shows that mock or make fun or critique or raise questions that are uncomfortable. Enemy. So that is what authoritarianism is like. Are you a donor to the opposition party? Enemy. So I don't know why these rich people were being targeted by the government, but I know that it was the government behind the deaths. And God is telling us that when we start to see high-profile deaths, it could also be this. If the government is working on projects that have certain powerful men at the helm, this is how those men and their wives will die, simply because you cannot come into a house and murder the man and leave the woman and her children alive. They tend to talk. And it's not always a fact that if you threaten the widow and threaten the children, that the family will keep quiet. You're an inventor that has something the government wants. The government will kill you and your wife and then subsume that thing. Will steal the patents, will steal everything. Will make sure that they target and run after your company until it's broken up to pieces and dissolved. And then boom, they're going to give you 2 years after the mourning, but 1 year because you know what, we're in a hurry here. And then that thing that guy had, that thing that he already floated at least 3 or 4 investors conferences, and everyone knows that's Patrick's idea. Boom, the government is going to come up with the identical thing. And to make it funny, they're probably not even going to change the name. They may be going to change one vowel of what the guy was calling it and bring it out, and everybody's going to know they stole it, but we want to see who's going to do anything about it. So that's what happened. I was walking across a living room. My perspective, I didn't see myself, but it's the perspective I had when I suddenly saw a man rolling up a blue tarp. He had pulled most of it up, and I saw that there was blood streaked on a part of it, but the majority of it, as he had put it under the various cupboards, arranged it around couches and stools and side tables, most of it was not bloody. But as he was pulling it towards himself, bunching it up in his arms, there was a portion right up next to him that was indeed bloody. And I saw it, and the man heard me, but he didn't see me. He jerked, he stopped, and he looked around because he had already been in the house for hours before he killed the couple. And so he knew that there was nobody there. So when he heard me walk and then stop, he started looking around, but he couldn't see me, but I could see him very, very clearly. And then I looked up and I could see through. It's like I saw through the floor, but at the same time saw through the floor and then above the bed, a couple wearing outside clothes, as in even wearing their shoes, as in even wearing their coats, dead in their marital bed. It was a white couple. Their throats had been slit. So this wasn't one of those make it look like a burglary and steal a couple of, no, it quite obviously looked like a hit. And sometimes the government will do that. Sometimes the government will make it look like a robbery. Sometimes when they're silencing witnesses, like they silenced that young lady that Prince Andrew and them killed in Australia, Virginia Giuffre, right? They will make it look natural. They will make it look like a suicide. They will make it look like the victim just got unhinged from the pressure and all the wins that she had against them, and how she proved her case against Epstein and got her some ever millions and went off. Then they will act like, oh no, the pressure was too much for her and she took her own life because, you know, a woman who won a case that she had been fighting for more than a decade, that's what they do. So they make it look like that. Other times they make it look exactly like a hit because everybody in the profession, for instance, if that person is a banker or if that person is a scientist, everyone in that profession knows exactly what's up. Everyone in that profession gets the message simultaneously that this could be you with very little effort, with us doing so little. This could be you, so don't try us. So I looked up and my eyes went through the roof into the couple's bedroom, and I saw them from above and they were dead. Throats cut on their bed, wearing outside clothes, even coats and shoes. I saw them laying in bed with gaping mouths and horrible expressions, while at the same time, if I brought my eyes down from there, then I saw this man still trying to tug the rest of the tarp. This man was still doing cleanup. He was still trying to pull the rest of the tarp, but he kept darting around and looking around to see what is it that I heard, because I heard something. But what is it that I heard? Is there a cat in here or something like that? Just a moment, please. And so that was my third dream. My first dream was that a death was coming and we were wearing black to signify that we had lost someone in America and it was by force, and some people were protesting quietly. And then my second dream was seeing the government loot the country exceptionally. And then the third dream is the government putting hits on rich people, murdering rich people, but Yah has not given me the reason as to why. And then my fourth dream, I saw J.D. Vance trying to preach. Vice President J.D. Vance. I saw him trying to be a preacher. In fact, I wrote here, I saw J.D. Vance in my dreams trying to be like Charlie Kirk, in that he started trying to use the Bible in his answers and speeches to the American people. He started trying to use Bible verses in his speeches and his one-on-ones with the press and in his other appearances, but he was woefully uninformed on what the Bible says, and it showed. You'd sit there listening to him trying to sound like an authority on the subject of the Word of God, and failing miserably. He failed so bad at it that that a listener could easily reach this conclusion: this man doesn't know the Bible at all. He was talking rubbish, and everybody knew it. And from what I saw, quite a few people, especially in the press, independent press, I guess you could call it the podcaster situation. Independent people like the podcasters and other pundits, as well as the Associated Press, as well as the mainstream media, they called him out on it constantly. Whatever impression he was trying to put forward to the people, that he was a man of the word of God and he's a man of faith and everything like that, it didn't take. It wasn't sincere. We didn't buy it to see that man standing up there talking about, and in the words of Jesus, or saying, and as Peter once said in the middle of his speeches, people's general demeanor to him doing that was like, give it a rest, JD. You don't even know what that means. And so there has been quite an uproar in recent days that is not at all related to this, because I only found out about the uproar, I guess, a day or two after it happened, whereby Mrs. I'm Not Grieving Anything, widow Mrs. Kirk, was at a memorial for her husband in a trendy type of Julia Roberts t-shirt, leather pants getup, which is what all the widows are wearing these days. And she was giving an introduction, and she said that the vice president carried so many overtones of her husband. No one can replace her husband. Don't misread her. But the vice president carries just so many similarities with her husband. And then they had what is being carried, I think rightfully so, as an overly intimate moment on stage before exchanging the podium, whereby he then came to speak. And so this piece has been going viral everywhere, all over the place. And all I will say, America, is that if you are this big, right, as my mom always says, when you are this big, that you need deodorant, because we all know that the babies have a beautiful smell, powdery smell, and they don't need deodorant. But all children reach a point where maturity kicks in, the hormones start working, and then we're like, hey buddy, hey, you need deodorant. If you are this big that you use deodorant and you do not know how to tell when someone is truly grieving, when someone is truly broken over a personal loss, do you think that losing a spouse is like losing Fido, your pet? It's worse. You've never bonded with Fido the way you've bonded with a husband or a wife. Losing a spouse is the death of part of you. And like I said, around the world, there is only one posture of genuine grief: when a spouse that you really loved passes away. But anyway, be that as it may, I think that a lot of Americans don't understand that, because they're so busy staring at the president right now. I think that a lot of Americans don't really understand, very few understand, that the greater evil between the president and the vice president is the vice president. A lot of people don't know that. If we are left in the hands of that man for any reason, it would be better to spend all night hollowing out a tree until you have a canoe by morning, and you just ride that canoe along Gulf of Mexico or wherever Gulf you can, and ride the canoe if you don't have a passport, and make your way somewhere else. He carries, I won't even say undertones. The vice president carries overtones of authoritarianism and frat boy bullying that are actually terrifying. If you are a female and you cannot see through that man, if you cannot see through that man would be the greatest architect of the fact that if you are a woman, you will never open your mouth again in this country, if that man were to hold power by any means, for any reason, even for a season, even for 6 months, we would be crushed under the weight of the fist of the type of person that was born insecure. You know, when the person who never really got a moment to speak, never got a moment to shine, never got a moment to really be one of the cool boys, you know, one of the jocks, one of the boys that naturally, there's some boys who naturally get attention from their peers, from their educators, from grown-ups, and from the girls. They get that attention all on the side. And then there's another type of boy who is born into shadow, and unless he distinguishes himself in some way, he is almost doomed to stay in that shadow, to stay as the wingman, to stay as the person in the shadow behind the golden boy. That is who that man is. There is so much power hungriness in that man that it is very dangerous. If you are the father of a girl and you live in this country and you cannot see the world that is being shaped. In fact, I'm just going to speak freely because all these things, they were the things that were coming up into my consciousness when I was spending my time in the church today, and I was spending my time earlier before church, just ruminating on these dreams and what they mean. Part of the America that is coming is an America in which the female will be seen if she's lucky, but not heard no matter what. I'll say it again. The America that is coming, the American female will be seen if she's lucky, and she will be heard never. Her voice will be silenced. Her voice will be absolutely useless. Her voice will not be consequential. Her voice will not be needed. And if you are a woman and you're not aware of the kind of man that you may be living with, watch his response and watch his reaction to discussions of, do we really need female suffrage? Do we really need women in government? Do we really need women in places of power? Was it not a mistake to have, different acts passed that give them the right to vote, that allowed them to integrate? Are they really leadership material? If you see the person that you live with interested in that kind of discussion, right? The man that you live with, the man that you're planning to marry, God forbid, and you see that person, and that person is saying things like, I actually can never see myself being led by a woman, and you continue on in that relationship, then all I can say is that something in you must not like you. You, the woman, something in you must not like you for you to put your hand into lifelong covenant with someone who openly declares in your face that they really see very little use or very little weight in what you know, or they basically can only see a few niche areas that you can contribute, like childbearing, because he wants children and he can't have the children by himself. And so he thinks that you're a pretty acceptable vessel to have children with, and things like that. If you live with someone who is sitting next to you on the couch and is watching these things, and then either seems very interested in it, but won't say it because maybe he thinks you're there, or who doesn't actually have an outburst and say, listen to the rubbish these people are talking, J.D. Vance will be one of the leading architects of this kind of thing, because on the inside is a person that has longed for and lusted after power all of his life. And in the dream, God was showing me that this man, due to the recent Turning Points events, his eyes have been opened to the efficacy of how America abuses the Bible for personal political gain and to build up a personal following. That's the reason that so many Americans follow false teachers. They follow false prophets. Is because in America, there seems to be this general belief that the speaking forth of the scripture is an automatic guarantee that the character of the person is right. Mr. Kirk had rotten character. And it astounds me that it took such a horrible event happening in his life. But what that event has done is it has blown the lid off of how many horrible people we have in the church. Because if you're sitting in the church and you think that the expositions of that horrible character that he had match the teachings of Jesus, match the speech of Jesus, match the personality of Jesus. Because what Jesus would do on a random weekend is walk around saying that he has absolutely no faith in black people and Spanish people as worthy compatriots to any other color of people. That's what Jesus would do. Jesus would just walk around and say that, when I see a black pilot at the airport and I'm worried because, I hope he's qualified. This is exactly the kind of speech that we can count on the Messiah that many of us claim is our Messiah. There's no matching between the Jesus of the Bible, the man that he was, so often misrepresented in this country, and the people that Americans claim are the biggest Christians that they're following. The thing is almost comical, except that comical things don't have a dangerous edge. In America, there's a massively dangerous edge, and so only a fool would laugh at being among people who claim that they're Christians, but will sit and listen to a full Stephen Miller speech. We create, we build. We are something. You are nothing. That's Jesus on an average Tuesday on, on any random hill where he was preaching. He always said that other people were nothing. He didn't spend time saying, love your neighbor as yourself. What does Jesus know about the neighbor principle? No. He would be talking about the hills of Valhalla and the hills of Pennsylvania and the hills of Greece and the hills of Rome, where we waged war and built civilizations. And that's what Jesus would do. That's the Jesus that the majority of people in this country are following. The one that's inside Stephen Miller. The one that's inside Stephen Miller doesn't know anything about the one that's in the Bible. And this discrepancy is not addressed often enough until we have some kind of a catalyst, like the killing of someone who, if that person represented Jesus, then I'm Hindu. I, Celestial, am a Hindu. If that was a Christian, one of the greatest evangelists of our time, his followers have been saying on this blog, then I am a Hindu. I'm a Hindu, and what I do is I come here on this channel and I moonlight as a Christian to pass time, because it definitely isn't to make money. I'm not monetized. The hypocrisy in this country is rank. And so in this dream, I saw the vice president trying to preach, he recognized, I guess, off the back of Turning Point and seeing what a massive juggernaut of a movement it has become. This random housewife now has like 3-point-something million followers in only a month after her husband's death, because everybody loves a grieving widow. And everybody also loves a bright, shining star of white Christian nationalism. And so Turning Point is growing massively fast, that this woman in her own right has like 3.2 or 3.3 million followers by herself. So obviously the vice president, whose popularity is in the toilet because he is just an unlikable slime, he must have seen the usefulness of bringing Jesus on board as a sidekick, because everybody in America loves Jesus. At least they love Stephen Miller's Jesus, not the real one, because he's very difficult to love and follow, because his ways are approximate to dying to self. But the average person in this country doesn't want to die to self, and so they prefer to follow, John Hagee's Jesus, Joel Osteen's Jesus, T.D. Jakes' Jesus, Benny Hinn's Jesus, and Stephen Miller and Charlie Kirk's Jesus. Real Jesus is definitely experiencing a dip in the numbers, a drop in the polls, but we will just try to help him the best we can here on the Master's Voice. So the vice president saw the usefulness, the benefits that he could get. And he started trying to be like Charlie Kirk, dropping scripture here and there. But the press was like, what are you doing? Even the atheist press were like, I don't think that's how that goes. Podcasters were talking about it. What is this guy trying to do? Does he think he's Charlie Kirk? And people were generally mocking him because he was trying to use Bible verses in the speeches and the one-on-ones and trying to sound very sage. Jesus makes you sound very sage, except that if you misapply Jesus, you end up looking like a buffoon, and you also end up looking and sounding like a hack. Better not to use the scripture unless you know what the heart of the scripture is meant to convey, and you actually know what the spirit of the scripture is meant for. If you know the Bible well, God will help you apply it brilliantly. If you don't know, though, you will really hit a false note. And the thing is that when people who aren't following Jesus can call you out on it, like people who don't bother to call themselves Christians, when they can tell that you're misapplying the scriptures, then you really look bad and like a liar. And so everybody could see that this man was talking rubbish. They knew it. And from what I saw in the independent press, even to podcasters, Associated Press, the mainstream, people kept calling him out on it and embarrassing him in public because nobody felt that he was sincere. And whatever image he was trying to put across, it didn't take. The last dream that I had was that the government tried to turn back time. Now, I'm not talking about turning back time as in go into time and turn back real time. No, the government was trying to undo this massive do that they have done. This whole year of stuff that they have done, I dreamt about 5-6 times that the government tried to undo it. Now, what I saw a building, tall, gray, and official building that at the same time looked like Sheraton Hotel Sofitel, one of the really good ones. But at the same time, it had that general, heavy, severe look of a government building. And so the government were represented by about 10 men and women. And there was a staircase in the front. You know how they have the accessible wheelchair ramp to get you up to the place where the entry door of a place is. So the wheelchair ramp was there. And there were also stairs going up one way and then zigzagging up one way. And then you would come to the place where you could open the door. There was above that a deck. So the government were kind of like outside on an outer deck of the first floor. And then the ground floor had the entry with a wheelchair accessible deck and a pair of zigzag stairs to get you to that place where you could open the door and come into the building. I was on the ground where the wheelchair ramp and the beginning of the stairs were. And I called out to the government, but I don't know what I said to them. I either called out to the government or I called out the government. Calling out someone is just what I mentioned in the dream with J.D. Vance. Exposing someone for something, telling someone, hey, what you're saying is not true, or just basically fact checking them, but in public. That's what it means to get called out. So I either called out to the government like, hey, asking them for something, or I called them out. And then they said, I called out to them and I don't know what it is that I told them, right? I don't know what it is that I said. And then they said, oh, is that what's going on? Well, sorry about that. Sorry. We're going to try and fix that. We're going to work on it right away. And then one of them threw something to me and I reached out my hands to catch it, but it never got to me. I reached out my hands to catch something that I saw them throw to me, but it never landed in my hands. And right away, the dream cut back to the start. I was at the bottom where the stairs and the ramp was. The ground floor was there, just a little bit elevated, and the government were all outside on the first deck, about 10 men and women, just all of them wearing suits, and they were on the first deck. And I called out to them, or I called them out, and they turned again, and they paid attention to me, and they said, I don't know what I said to them. I don't know what I said, but I was talking about how I need something, or I'm supposed to have something, or government, have you noticed how this and that is no longer there for us? Have you seen, government, that we no longer have the ABCs that were always there? And now I looked and I don't have it. What's going on, government? And again, the government answered me and said, oh, what's that? You don't have that? No, that's not right. You're supposed to have that. We're going to fix it. We're going to look into that right away. Just give us a minute. They turned around in a huddle and then they conversed, talking among themselves. And then they all seemed to agree. And then somebody turned and said, here, and threw me something. And again, I raised my hands to catch it, but I didn't get anything. Whatever it was, it didn't land to me. And this dream happened 3 times in a row. And I said, God, what is it that I'm seeing? I woke up briefly and I said, God, what is it that I'm seeing? What are they really trying to do? And why isn't it working? Did they even really throw anything to me? What are they up to, Lord? But I was so sleepy and I went right back to sleep. And I had the same dream twice more, standing at the bottom, calling out to the government, or calling out the government, alerting them that there was something I needed, something that I should have. Where is it? Have you noticed that we don't have this? And they said, what? And they attempted as if they were going to fix it, but they were not sincere in it. And every single time they were not getting whatever it is that they said they were going to get to me. Now, I don't use anything from the government, but when I woke up, the explanation that I was getting in my spirit about this is that the turning back time is like when a man assaults his wife. When you have been living with your wife for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, or whatever it is, and then you start to beat her and you assault her so bad that she has to go in and get bones resets and get facial reconstruction and get all kinds of things. And now you're at that stage when they bring her back to the house, right? So you've hurt this person so bad that there's damage that needed to be repaired by a third party. You are not a cosmetic surgeon. You are not a whatever, a cop. So you couldn't save her. The cops had to come and rescue her. And the cosmetic surgeon and the other surgeons and the doctor and the anesthesiologist and the physical therapy people had to fix this woman. And now they bring her back in the state of healing to your house. And then when you get back to the house, you find him washing dishes and offering to walk the dog, and I'll clean the kids and I'll do this and I'll drop the kids off at school. That activity, God was putting it in my mind. is what he meant back. I saw the government trying to turn back time. There are things in this world where when you do them, you cannot fix them. They are unfixable. You're not going to be able to repair them. We can never go back to how it was before you blacked my eye and broke my collarbone. So whoever has an awareness that a man does this to you, and then you return back to that place and continue to live with that aggressor as if he never did anything, as if you are back in the time before. That is not wisdom. And so God was showing that after all the government has done to America, the government is about to start acting as if, what was that? There was no snap. There was no gas. There was no light. There was no what? You're supposed to have those things. This is what Yah was basically showing, that the government is going to attempt to pretend for some reason that 2025 never happened. But of course it did. It happened. It was loud. It was proud. It was live. It was on record. So these are the dreams that I saw. The dreams of a coming death that is going to plunge America into a proper authoritarian regime, not the shadow of one that she's already reacting with terror to. I saw the government stealing in such a way that it was untraceable. I saw the government putting hits out on the wealthy, killing those that are inconvenient to it. I saw current President J.D. Vance trying to emulate a man of God because he thought that it would improve his approval numbers and make him more relatable. And I saw that the government was trying to act as if everything that has happened up to date never happened at all. I'm Celestial, and this is the Master's Voice Prophecy blog. You can follow me on audio podcasts. You can follow me on my extra video channels. And God bless you. And until I see you again, goodbye.